Ryan Jarrell here for Fight Bananas, and it's always a pleasure to have my next guest on the show. It's Cody Brundage, who you can see back in action March the 1st at UFC Vegas 103 when he takes on Julian Marquez. Cody, how are you?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me back. It's always a good time.
Yeah, brother, good talking to you again, man. And it's been a while. The last time we spoke was right before UFC 300, so that was quite some time ago, man. I can't believe it's already 2025. How has your Christmas and New Year been?
It was good, man. Busy. My family lives in South Carolina. My wife's family's in Michigan. So we're just kind of all over. And now we're back, for camp and ready to lock in. But it was good, man. It was good to travel. Traveling with two kids under 5 years old is not for the faint of heart. So definitely learned some lessons this holiday season, but it was good, man.
How did Santa treat the kids? Was it a fun Christmas?
Oh yeah, Santa always treats the kids really well. Santa didn't really do much for me this year, but the kids were definitely benefiting big from Santa.
Okay. Well, I think the most important thing you want to get a win here, March the 1st. That would be the perfect belated Christmas present, man.
For
And
sure.
you look good. Are you a little bit heavier right now than normal? You look like maybe you packed on some muscle.
Yeah, I'm like probably 210 right now. I took so after my last fight, I took like 4 months off where I didn't do anything, right? I was in the gym. I've been coaching full time, which I've loved doing and that's been enjoyable and being a part of the gym is important to me. But yeah, I just felt like I needed to not do anything. 4 months is probably more time than I've ever taken off, even since I was an amateur. So it was tough to do that, but I felt super necessary. And honestly, I didn't know if I was going to come back to fighting. I was in a good place where I was like, man, if I just want to coach, I can be at peace with that. And then after some talks with my wife and Coach Mark and some of my buddies, that I trust, some people in my circle, they're like, hey man, you're really talented and you're only 30 years old. I think, if a matchup comes across that you like and makes sense, I think we jump on it and get back into it. This will be 8 months in between fights. And so originally they offered me Ryan Loder and I like that fight a lot. So I was like, yeah, man, definitely. I like that fight. And maybe it's a good one to come back on. And so, like I said, we discussed it and decided to say yes. But yeah, I took quite a bit of time off, and I don't know if I gained a bunch of muscle, but I definitely put on some weight for sure.
Okay. Well, fair enough. We still got a ways out before March 1st, so I'm sure you're going to be nice and lean and making 185 when
Oh
it's
yeah.
time to step on the scale. Um, as far as Ryan Loder versus Julian Marquez, how different of a matchup is it? Did you have to think harder to say yes to this fight versus Loder?
I don't know if I had to think harder. I'm pretty familiar with Julian. Me and Julian trained together for like a year at Factory X, and I think maybe it was harder to say yes because I'm friendly with Julian. We're pretty good buddies, and it's always weird. But at the end of the day, it's business, and um, I won't say that it's not personal because fighting. I think it's always funny when people are like it's not personal. Fighting is like the most personal thing you can do, and so uh, that's a stupid statement that it's not personal. But I don't think it's any more personal. I
Hmm.
think like if Julian were to knock me out, I'm not going to feel differently about Julian as a person. But fighting's fighting, and I like the matchup. There's some things that Julian does really really well, and he's experienced. He's a vet. He's been in the UFC a long time. Um, he's dangerous. He has a lot of finishes. But there's just some things that I feel like I can match up with him, and having trained with him, feel like okay, here's where I've had success. Here's where he had success, and then there's benefits and negatives to that. He knows where to avoid, and he knows where he had his successes in our training, and it makes for an interesting kind of chess match. But um, I'm also realistic. I'm on the last fight on my deal, and there wasn't really an option to say no. It sounds good to be like, man, I could have said no, but at a certain point, there's not really an option to say no. And that's kind of the position I was in. And I told Julian that. Me and Julian have spoke. And, I just kind of told him, like, you're in the same spot I'm in. We haven't had the most success as of late. So, you have to say yes. And he understands that. I understand that. So, it should be an exciting fight. I'm looking forward to it.
He's on a three-fight skid. Is it safe to say that? Do you feel like the loser of this fight might not fight in the UFC again?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think it's pretty clear writing on the wall. Loser goes home. And, um, that's okay. I feel like I've been in that position quite a bit in my career, and I've been able to stick around. Uh, so I feel good about it.
Yeah, and he was starched by Zach Reese. I mean, guy you know really well. And Zach Reese is
Hmm.
tall, he's long. We know he's got a ton of power. So I mean, no shame in losing to that guy. But you beat him. Is MMA math? Does that mean you should beat Julian? Like, can you kind of like elaborate on the styles here?
Yeah, I don't know if MMA math is ever really accurate. I was pretty surprised that Zach was able to take him out like that. I was at that fight in person. I was backstage with Julian. I wasn't in his corner. I was there with Dustin, but we were sharing a locker room. This was after he'd moved to the lab, and I thought he looked really sharp in his warm up. And I was like, man, I think it's gonna be a tough fight for Zach. He's more of a jiu-jitsu guy, and he has power, but definitely the thing that I would avoid with him would be the ground. And so when he went out and just starched him right away, I was kind of shocked because the other thing is Julian's very durable. I feel like he's made a career of being a super tough. He has a great chin. He's fought some guys that hit really hard. I mean, he fought Gregory. I know he got finished, but he got dropped 5 times by Gregory before he got finished, and RoboCop's no joke. So I was kind of shocked to see him get put away like that. And like I said, I don't really believe in MMA math, but I am familiar with Zach, and to see him do that was surprising to me.
Is it fair to say, like, leading up to this fight, maybe at the fight week, the pre-fight conference, all that stuff, like it'll be friendly. It won't be bad blood, mean spirited. You guys will be probably friendly with one another.
I mean, from on my end, it'll be friendly. I don't know how Julian, will react to it. It'll be one of two ways. It'll be either really friendly or, it'll be really not friendly, right? I feel like with a fight like this, the emotions are, there's no like middle ground. Most people I fight, I feel like it's pretty middle ground. I don't feel one way or the other. Um, and I feel like most fighters are probably that way. But when there's a familiarity there, it can be amped up, or it could be kind of like, okay, we know what it is. And to me, like there's some guys for sure that I've trained with that I would never fight. Um,
Dustin.
Dustin Jacoby's one of those guys. Colin England's one of those guys. Like those are some of my best friends, and they're uncles to my kids, and we've been through each other through real life things. And then there's guys that I've trained with that I wish nothing bad for them. I want really good things for them, but business is business, and this is kind of one of those fights. And I think Julian is feels the same way. And if not, that's not my burden to have. I can't determine how he feels, or if he's going to be upset, or if he wants to have bad blood, or whatever you want to call it. But it doesn't matter, right? Like when we get in the cage, him being mad at me, him being upset, him being friendly, none of it matters. Like at the end of the day, I'm trying to separate you from consciousness and in front of your family, and that's a tough thing to do to anyone. And the way you feel about it doesn't really matter that much.
To go back to what you said before we started talking about the matchup with Julian Marquez, you said, you questioned whether you wanted to fight again. Obviously, the last couple of fights, it's been tough. Um, what made you come to the decision to say yes? And I do want to continue to go on. And what was going through your head to make you even think about walking away?
Yeah, I think I was just losing my joy a little bit, and I don't think that was. I think that was more outside sources that I was losing my joy, and I was just really unhappy. And then also, I had a lot of head trauma. I was since I got signed to the UFC. I think me and Kevin Holland were the most active guys in the UFC. We both had 10 fights in pretty much the same amount of time, and that's a lot of training. That's a lot of being in camp. That's a lot of sparring. And I felt after that last fight, I never really had super bad concussions, but after that last fight, I was waking up for like 2 months, just waking up in the morning in tears, and I had no idea why. And it was just scary, and it was tough. And my wife was concerned, and I have young kids, and I'm like, man, I'm only 30 years old, and that's the big fear I think for everyone. And you're not going to escape this game without a little bit of that. But it's like, man, is it worth it? And like, am I happy? Am I really enjoying like what I'm doing? Like, I love being in the gym. I love being there with my boys. I love being there for Dustin, and being there for my buddies. But am I sacrificing too much? And and then there's like your head's already a little bit messed up, and then you're like, man, all these people hate me. Like, what's the point? I'm fighting for them anyway. And that was kind of the root of it. I think was that I was like, man, and that's kind of what I had to separate, was that I was fighting for a lot of reasons that didn't really, when I stepped back and got on the outside of it, didn't really make sense. Like I want to make my family proud, and I want to make my coaches proud, and my team proud, and I want people to like me, and I want people to enjoy my fights. And at the end of the day, like those all sound like good reasons, but they're all terrible reasons to fight. And um, I think I just had to separate that and be like, man, what do you want to do? You know, and I'm a very not selfish person, and it seemed that to me that always seemed like selfish. Like, what does Cody want to do? But at the end of the day, when it comes to fighting, like the people that are proud of me and the people that love me, the people that know me, whether I could be a high school teacher and wrestling coach, and they're going to be proud of me and love me and support me. So fighting for that reason, just it wasn't doing it for me anymore, and I just wasn't happy, and my brain was not where it needed to be, and you know I've never been. I don't fight because fighting's my only option. I feel like some people fight because fighting's their only option. You know, I have 3 degrees from college. I was a 3-time academic All-American. You know, I have other pursuits that I could have, and so, you know, losing my brain is a scary thing always. But I think that's part of the reason like I took so much time off. You know, the PI really did a great job of hooking me up with some supplementation. My sports psych guy really helped me a lot. But you know, I just came to the conclusion that I love fighting and it's my passion, and that's how I feel right now. And if after this fight I was like, hey man, I think I'm good, I'm at peace with that. And you know, I've never really had that peace before because it's always been like, man, I didn't achieve what I want to achieve. Even after wins, man, it's like I didn't achieve what I wanted. That wasn't the performance I wanted. That I could have done better. Are these people proud of me? Did I, you know what I mean? And like I said, those sound like good reasons, but when you're in the heat of it, it's really not. And so as simple as it is just that I want to do this. I love doing it. I feel like I'm pretty good at it. And if I don't feel that way, like I don't want to do it, then I won't. And I think that's a better headspace for me to be in, and I'm a happier person for it for sure.
Yeah. I appreciate you diving into that, man. Obviously the people that are in your inner circle are the only ones that really matter at the end of the
Yeah.
day. And screw the other people that want to hate that don't even know you, that,
Yeah.
they see you in person, they want to come up and get a picture with you, right?
Well, like one thing that's crazy, you know, about, and it just kind of reaffirmed it for me. Like I was already feeling this way, but then after Dustin's last fight, you know, I was there with him, and it was just such an awesome victory, and we were all in tears, and we were all happy, and we are all crying, and you know, just knowing the adversity that guy has gone through, and to have a performance like that against such a stud in Petrino, and you know, it was just a great moment. And then the next day, I see people like, "Well, you didn't really like." He came out about how he broke his toe, and like we were all there. I seen the toe snapped off his foot, like, and they're like, you didn't actually break your toe. If you broke your toe, it would be. It's like, man, no matter what you do, if you're chasing that like affirmation of good feelings from people, like you're never gonna get it. And so it's a losing battle. And if that's where you're finding happiness, you're not ever gonna feel that happiness. And uh, it was I already, like I said, I was already feeling that, and that's why I decided to fight. But the affirmation of that from Dustin's fight, I was like, okay, this is just more confirmation that like chasing that is not really worth it.
Yeah. Um, that fight with Petrino, my God, I was going to ask you about this because when I interviewed him after the fight, I mean, look, I try to be unbiased, but I cheer for you guys. Like
Yeah.
you and Dustin, I love you guys. I like to see you win.
Hmm.
But I thought Dustin was losing that fight. I mean, on the scorecards it was 1-1, but like from the eye test, I thought he was losing the fight, and I said that to him when I interviewed him after the fight, and he was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa. It was tied 1-1." Did you think he was going to lose that fight if he didn't pull that rabbit out of the hat?
Oh well, you know, it was tied 1-1, but there was 1 minute left in the fight, and I felt like he was losing the third round. You know, so I felt we told him on the stool, hey man, probably 1-1. Um, so I felt it was tied, but you know, he would have had to do something really big in that last minute to steal that round back. Is how I felt. And I never feel confident when we go to the judges in a close fight like that. I never do, especially given Dustin's history. You know, the Kutalaba fight was super tight fight, didn't go our way. The Roundtree fight, I
Yeah,
felt like we won. I felt like that fight was more decisive than the Petrino fight, and we didn't get that one. So,
agreed.
uh,
Yeah,
you know, I'm never confident going into the judges' scorecards, and so for him to put a stamp on it, you know, like I said, he needed to do something big to win it, and I mean, that's probably knockout of the year. You know, if you take away like all the bias of like what card it was, or you know if it was for a belt or not, if you're just looking at pure knockout, like that's got to be up there for knockout of the year, I think.
I jumped up out of my seat and I couldn't believe it. It was so perfectly placed, so clean. Oh my God.
Yeah,
What
it
was
was.
that what was the after party like? Like with you guys
Yeah.
being on cloud nine, what was that night like?
Oh man, it was great. Dustin, it's always funny. I always tell everybody, if I wasn't one of Dustin's best friends, man, I would hate him because he's just one of those guys. Like he walks in a room, everyone wants to be close to that guy. Everyone wants to be around him. Like he has quarterback energy. And I guess it makes sense. He was a college quarterback, but the dude's good at everything he does. We just make up some game like who can shoot a tape ball closest to this rock and he'll beat everyone at it. It's not even a real game. He's just the guy. Like he is the man and he travels so well. There's probably 100 people at his after party that all know him personally. And I always tell him like it's a testament to like what a good dude he is that people want to be around him and they gravitate towards him. And yeah, it was great, man. It was awesome. I'm very close with him, his brother, his wife, and his family. And so, it feels good to watch one of your best friends like have a win like that. And like I said, I know all the adversity he's gone through, and he'll tell everybody, "Oh, I wasn't thinking about it. My back was against the wall. I wasn't thinking about that." But that's a little bit of bravado because we're all thinking about that, and to go out and have that performance, because also the thing is, man, like in the arena, fans are booing if Dustin, like that's like his kryptonite. Like, okay, I have to go. The fans are booing me, and he held it together and found his moment. And yeah, man, it was super super exciting and just one of those moments that I'll remember forever. It was great.
Well, this puts him right back in the mix, right? Like a win
Oh
like
yeah,
that over a guy like Petrino. I mean, this rejuvenates his career.
for sure. And I feel like for me, it's like, hey, he killed this guy. Like, I want him. I wouldn't care if I don't really necessarily want him to fight up the rankings next. I would love for him to get a fight around 20, kind of where he's at, and just build a little bit more steam. This game's so momentum. And he is. I guess some people would say older for fighting, but for the division, he's not really. The champ is 37. He's 37. Jan's 40. you know, Uncle Ives, what, 34? Like all these guys are like a little bit older, especially as you go up in weights. It's not like he's a flyweight. So the age thing, I don't think is as big a worry at 205 as maybe the younger guys. So give him a guy around his ranking, let him go get another highlight reel and then get him another contract. And then, back half of this year, beginning of 2026, we're coming tearing through the rankings. So, that would be my ideal year for him.
Well, I can't wait to see what's next for him.
Oh
Big,
yeah.
big win. Let me ask you about Yusuf Zalal and Calvin Cater. Analyze that matchup for me. What a fight.
Yeah, Yusuf is he's such a talent, man. He's good everywhere, super high level black belt. He's been showing that his last few fights and people forget, how good his striking is and his wrestling is very high level. Um, the version of him that people saw when he was first in the UFC compared to now is so vastly different in so many ways, even just physically. He's a real 45er now. I always joke with him. I'm like, Ben, you finally got your man body, and but he is, man. He's a big dude. He has some power that he carries now. His maturity is much higher than his first run in the UFC. Um, and he's just a great teammate. That dude's one of the most giving people I know, and Cater's a great fight for him. Calvin's a very, very good striker. He's fought really good competition, but he is getting a little bit older. He's been in huge wars. He's had some injury problems, so he hasn't been as active. All things that I think play in Yusuf's favor. It's a tough fight because anybody that's been in the top 10 that long, there's a reason they've been in the top 10 that long. But I like it for Yusuf, man. And I feel like if he can go out here and have a dominant win, it really sets him up very nice towards the end of the year. Once you get in the top 10, you're only a fight away from the belt. And, I think Cater's a good matchup for him. And I think there's some good matchups for him in the top five as well. So hopefully this one plays out well. And then we can go make our mark at the end of the year and set him up for that rematch with Taporia here 2026 maybe.
I really wish that this was a 5 round fight. That's
Same. I was very surprised that because Cannonier and RoboCop are the main event,
mhm.
and I was kind of surprised that it wasn't Cater and Yusuf, to be honest. But I think 5 rounds is almost better for Yusuf. Uh, his cardio is unreal, and training at elevation is important, and I think that helps a lot. But he's a kid too that like he really likes to make his reads for the first round, so he's not a super fast starter.
Mhm.
Um, I know it seems like he is because he's been finishing all these dudes, but he's not a super fast starter by design. So 5 rounds will play into his favor. When he starts getting into those main event, co-main event situations, I think that'll really show
It's gonna be a fun fight, man.
for
Is
sure.
Anthony Smith gonna fight again?
I don't know, man. I'll be honest for I want Anthony to do whatever Anthony wants to do. There's a lot of people saying I don't want him to fight. I do want him to fight. I want Anthony to do whatever Anthony wants to do, but I want him to do it the right way. I want him, if he's going to fight again, I want him to be full in, hard training camp, pushing hard, doing the work every day, And this camp was a little hard for him to do that. Obviously, there was a lot going on. And some guys feel like when tragedy happens, I think he made it pretty clear he felt like he had to fight. There was no option for him. Um, and I get that, that's kind of how some people cope, and that was how he was coping through a real tragedy. And I don't know, man. It's as his friend, I'm like, you don't need to, Like I always tell him, man, if this was a video game, you beat the game. You're a Disney employee. You're not just Anthony Smith the fighter, bro. You're Anthony Smith the Disney employee who does a great job on the desk and you get paid a salary. Like you have benefits. Like if this was the video game, you just retired and carried on your career. Like you maxed out, right? Madden mode, right? So it's like you don't have to, but if that's what you feel like you need to do, I just want him to do it the right way.
Yeah.
So, and I think he will. I don't think he'll go in there without respecting the game, and if not, I'm happy with that too. Uh, Anthony's a great dude, and um, that was a tough one, as
Yeah.
his friend, and that was a hard one to watch. And I knew he needed to do that for himself, and he doesn't want anyone to be like, don't feel sorry for me," But it was just tough to watch because I knew what he was going through, and um, it's hard to be successful in that situation, no matter what, and especially when you're fighting, a talented dude like Dominic Reyes. Like that guy's no joke.
Yeah.
So it makes it difficult for sure.
Talk a little bit about the mental side of coaching and how it's helping you as a fighter now going into to this matchup with Marquez. Like, do you feel like coaching? Obviously, I mean, you can't fight forever, but is coaching where your future lies? Is this maybe like where you might make your biggest mark in combat sports?
Yeah, I feel like I'm a better coach probably than I am fighter. And I feel like I'm a good fighter, so it's not like me being like, "Oh, I'm not good at fighting." I feel like I'm a good fighter. I just feel like I can see it very well. I feel like I can break down film very well. I think coaching's been huge for me as a fighter just because like trying to learn other styles is hard to do when you're in the thick of it fighting, but it's pretty necessary if you're going to coach. You kind of need to know like, "Hey, this guy's going to do this, so we have to do this." And there's definitely some things that you pick up doing that, and just small things like, hey, if I'm gonna trap set, these are some pathways I have. That if I was fighting, I'd be like, I need to focus on the one thing I'm good at. I don't need to focus on things that I'm not good at, because trying to improve things I'm not good at is not gonna win me the fight. I just got to get really good at the things I'm good at. So there's definitely a different mindset when it comes to coaching and fighting, and just being on the road with those guys and going through fight weeks when it's not necessarily all the pressure on me, I think is important. It's like a dress rehearsal without the brain damage. So it's that's a benefit as well. I've made that walk now with Yusuf, David, Dustin. I'll make it again with Yusuf here. So, I've made that white walk quite a few times, and it's good dress rehearsal for sure. Dealing with those nerves. The nerves are definitely different as a coach, but they're not way different.
Mhm.
So yeah, coaching's been definitely been a benefit. I think the time off has been huge. I've and that's kind of different. I've never been a believer in like, hey man, take time off, figure it out, but it's definitely been important for me for sure.
And I've talked to you a bunch. We've never actually met in person, but I feel like I know you because of the hours of interviews that we've done over the years. And you just seem to be a very caring, like empathetic person. Do you feel like that side of just you as a human being helps make you such a good coach? Is that something that maybe some feedback that you've heard?
Um, I don't know. I think in my younger years I probably wasn't, unfortunately. I think through some things that life's thrown my way, I think my perspective is a little bit different. I think I used to have a very short leash on the leash I would give people. And I think my leash is bigger now because I don't know what people are going through, you know. I know things I'm going through that people don't know that I'm going through, and or people even do know I'm going through. And you know, if I'm having a bad day or I'm not myself, you know, I would hope people would be a little empathetic with me, would give me a little bit of a leash, and you know, understand that I'm doing my best. And I think that most people are probably trying to do their best. And sometimes that's not great. Sometimes it's not even good. But I think you got to give people respect, and you got to give people the benefit of the doubt that, hey, man, you're just trying to make it like the rest of us. And life can be shitty, and it can be really hard, and it can seem unfair. And no matter what your problems are, somebody probably has a bigger problem. And um, I think that's good perspective for me. And um, I don't know. I'm not. It's weird, man. I'm not happy that I have that perspective because of, you know, I would say the main thing that gave me that perspective is my daughter. You know, I've been pretty open with our struggles with her and the things that she's gone through, and um, but just being a parent, and you know, you have all these dreams and aspirations of what life looks like for your children, and you never really get what your parents felt until you have a kid. Then you have a kid, and you're like, man, I want my kid to do this. I want my kid to do this. I want my kid to do this. And then when you realize maybe some of those things won't happen, I think your perspective gets very different. Um, and you know, like my biggest worry in the world used to be like, oh, am I gonna win this fight? Am I gonna make it to the UFC? Am I, you know, like things that seem so insignificant now. And then, you know, now my biggest worry is like, hey man, I hope my daughter stays seizure free. And not most, I'm glad. I'm not saying like poor me. I don't want people to think that, but I'm just saying like, you know, most people don't have that worry, and I'm glad they don't. Some people have bigger worries. So I just try to give people the benefit of the doubt, man. And that's been good for me. It's been good for my relationships. I think it's good for coaching. Um, but yeah, I think, like I said, probably wasn't the most empathetic and forgiving person as a younger guy. But now I think as a 30-year-old, it's definitely a little bit different.
You're older and wiser. We all become a little soft from an emotional standpoint as we get older, my man.
For
And
sure.
how is your daughter? She's good. No seizures.
Yeah, man, she's good. She's still seizure free, and she surpassed a lot of the things that she told us that we were told she would never do. You know, we were told she would never feed herself. We were told she would never walk. We were told she might never pick her head up. And, you know, she's walking and running around, and, you know, there's still things like she's nonverbal. That's a very difficult thing for me and for my wife, but we're working on a communication tablet, right? So that's our new goal that we got to get. How can we figure out how to communicate with her? Because those are just things you take for granted, right? Like my youngest daughter, she's a year and a half, and I always joke I have one nonverbal child and I have one child that is extra verbal, right? She's talking up a storm, right? And it's so easy to communicate of like, what do you need? What do you want? And my oldest, Kingsley, you know, she wants something so bad, and you know, it's frustrating for all of us because I'm like, she is so frustrated because she obviously needs something, and she can't communicate what she needs. And I just, you know, it's sad for me because I'm like, I couldn't imagine like if I needed something and I couldn't communicate to you that I want it, but if you just got me this one thing, I would be all good, you know? So that's a frustrating thing, but we're working through it. And I'm super lucky, man. My wife, she's an absolute rock star, and you know, I got super blessed with that. And um, yeah, we're working through it. But if it's not one thing, it's another thing, you know. So
Yeah.
that's my struggle, but everyone's got their own struggle.
I'm glad to hear she's seizure free and things
Yeah,
seem to be on the up and up and doing good. So
for
that's great to
sure.
hear, man.
Appreciate you,
Of
brother.
course, man. Of course. Before we, circle back to this matchup with Marquez, I did want to just get a little bit of your feedback on the last couple fights that you had, obviously with Bo Nickel, UFC 300, and then the Abdul Razak Al Hassan fight and that ending. Let's start with Nickel first, man. You got out of the first round. A lot of people didn't think you were going to do that, and you had some good moments in there. Like, what's the takeaways from that fight? What did you learn? What could you do better if you got in there with him again?
I think, you know, I did all that and I didn't follow our game plan at all. I needed to attack his legs a little bit more. But when you get in there in a big moment like that, you know, sometimes it just doesn't work out, or you're not using your brain, unfortunately. Or fortunately, you know, it's worked out good for me. Sometimes it's worked out not as good. I think just the patience a little bit. Got a little overzealous. I off the big moments. Like I had a big moment, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go kill him now. Instead of just being like, okay, great moment. Let's just pick. Let's just touch. Let's just be a little bit more composed here. So just lack of composure, really. I don't think like I didn't think there was anywhere that I was like, man, this guy is unbelievable. I thought obviously he's a great wrestler. I knew that. That wasn't a shock. I felt like the open mat wrestling was pretty even, to be honest. I didn't feel like I don't think he took me down in the open mat. He had a couple attempts. I feel like I defended them very well, had good scrambles. He took me down on the cage, which I knew could be problematic. And then on the ground, I think one of the things he does best is that he does a really good job of just beating you to the next position. He was just a step ahead of me on the ground. Like, okay, I'm going to this position. Oh shit, he's already here. Um, and I don't think that's anything that I was doing wrong. I think you got to give the guy credit that he's very talented on the ground and in the grappling, and obviously he's going to pick that up quick. Um, I think his game plan, if I'm being 100% honest, after watching his fight with Paul Craig, I think he went into that fight with that game plan to be like, hey, I'm going to stand. This guy's just a wrestler. I'm going to show my striking, improve. And then I think very quickly on the feet, there was a big gap there, and he was like, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore. I have a better route to victory, and kudos to him. That's a great plan. Um, but yeah, I think just being a little bit more composed in that fight. As far as the Razak fight, I just was rushing. I think I shot in like the first 5 seconds, and that's not necessarily a terrible thing. I think I would have taken him down if I wasn't clipped in the back of the head, multiple times. Everyone's like, you couldn't even take him down. And it's like, well, I couldn't, but good takedown defense is knocking me out by hitting me in my brainstem. Like that's a pretty good way to keep me from taking you down. And there's not much to say about that fight. It was super short, and it was unfortunate. Obviously, if anyone on the roster didn't want to fight to go that way, I feel like I would probably be candidate number one that didn't want to have another fight end because of illegal strikes. I've been there. I've been down that road. I know what the repercussions are from that, and it's not a fun time. Um, but
It's,
at the
ba-
same time, man,
it's basically
it
like
was
deja vu with
yeah,
Malkoon.
yeah, it was rough, man. And in the hospital afterwards, I was with coach, and I was just like, man, we just looked at each other. I was like, I just can't believe this happened again, and um, it sucked. It was not fun. The months afterwards were not fun. I didn't feel like myself. I didn't feel like really in control of my emotions, and I felt like that before, but it was when I was young and was going through some things, and it's not a good place to be. And it was just tough, man. It was a dark time for sure, but I have good people around me, and pulled through it. And there's things that are more important, like I said, than fighting. And thank God there are, because if fighting was the most important thing, then I don't know if I'd be around. So I'm happy that I have good people around me for sure.
And the whole spectacle of UFC 300, what was that like to try and stay dialed in and focused with just how unbelievable everything about that night was? Were your nerves like on another level making the walk? What was that like?
It was crazy, man. It's probably like the least nervous I've been, to be honest, in a fight. Because I just didn't feel like it wasn't about me. It was about Bo Nickel, and that was cool for me. And it was also like going into that fight, I just felt, and this isn't true, but I just felt that he couldn't. I was like, the only way this guy beats me is he's gonna out wrestle me. Maybe he'll submit me, but he can't hurt me. I really felt like that. I was like, he doesn't have the ability to hurt me. He's not talented enough on the feet to hurt me. His ground and pound isn't very good. Which were all, I mean, those are all true statements. I'll probably catch hate because I got finished, but I wasn't fearful of like this dude's gonna really crack me, right? And everyone has that fear a little bit. It doesn't stop you from fighting, but that's kind of where I get my nerves. I'm like, oh man, this dude might crack me. Um, but with him, I didn't have that, and it was more just like a cool moment to be a part of UFC 300. And but at the same time, I feel like part of it, I have regrets. I think the regrets I have are that, like, again, I let my whole first 3 years in the UFC, I feel like I let a lot of people steal my joy. And I feel like being on the main card of 300 for whatever reason, whether it's because of Bo Nickel or not, like that should have been a joyful thing for me and my family, and it really wasn't, man. It was like me just trying to defend myself of like, oh, I don't pick, like I'm not choosing where I am on the card, and I should never have to do that. I should have just been happy for what an awesome opportunity for me and my family, and how cool that this is something that I'm getting to do. But I didn't feel like that at all. And, my regrets are I didn't really enjoy it because I was like, man, they're right. I don't deserve to be here and whatever. So, it was good. I mean, it's good learning to look back on it and be like, dude, don't let people do that anymore. But yeah, it was tough for sure.
So you've come a long way mentally, as a person, as a fighter. Do you feel like you're gotten to a point where you're almost like impenetrable as far as like getting inside of your head now?
I don't know. I think I'm definitely, I feel like people can get in my head. I just feel like maybe I can deal with it a little bit better now.
Mm.
Uh, I think it's so weird, man. Like some of the things that people would say to me, I can take people being like, man, you suck at fighting, or you're you should quit. They should cut you. I could take all that. That's fine. But like people that were like, there were people in my DMs like telling me like, man, I hope your wife leaves you, and your daughter's fucked up because you're a coward. Like just like things that were, I don't know. Just like thing like shouldn't matter. They're nobodies. They're literally fake profiles, and it shouldn't matter. But it does. It matters, like, because that's, you're already triggered by things, with your family, and so it sucks. But I think I just deal with it a little bit better. I think I can just see it for what it is a little bit and realize that, man, like someone told me this the other day, and it was like one of the best things I've ever heard. Like if I wanted to go do what this person that's talking to me does, you give me a year or 2 years, I could go do it. I could figure out how to do it. But if they want to come do what I do, they could do it. They could start training for the rest of their life, and they'll never be able to do what I do. Right. And so, you just got to accept that it is what it is. And people don't even know what it is that someone's going through. And um, I think realizing too that everyone goes through it a little bit. I watched, do you remember that David Beckham documentary that came out?
Was it a while ago?
It was a while ago. It was on
Yeah.
Netflix, but he was just talking about, he kind of went through similar things. And I'm nowhere near the star David Beckham is, obviously, but he was just talking about how like people were hating on him, and everybody was on him about his relationships and what he was doing in his life and how he went through a depression. And so it's not an uncommon thing. Um, and I think to see that people go through that is important. But it does suck, man. It sucks when what's your favorite thing? Like what is your favorite thing that you do?
Well, when I was younger, it was basketball. I dreamed of being in the NBA. But I played in college at a, D3 level.
Hmm.
It was tough when I had to accept the fact that, no, it's my childhood dream is never going to happen, but such is
Yeah.
life. Yeah.
But if you were playing basketball and you love basketball, but every day there was someone there being like, dude, fuck you. You're never gonna make it. You suck. This isn't like eventually, whether you like that person, whether they are important, whether they matter, you're like, dude, if I just quit playing basketball, this dude will leave me the fuck alone. Right? So that goes in your head. Like whether you love it or not, you love it. It's great. It's your escape. It's all these things. Like for me, I feel like I love fighting because I can go train for 2 hours, and that's 2 hours that I'm not thinking about my real life. And like I love my life. I'm not saying like I don't want to think about my life, but there are things in my life that I'm like, I have to have a reprieve from this because it is so overwhelming to think about what am I going to do, for my daughter and my family, and how can I make sure that she's taken care of if I'm not here. And like I don't think like most people aren't thinking about what's going to happen when I'm 70 years old, what's going to happen, you know what I mean? So that gives me a reprieve. It's something that's part of the reason I love it. When I'm fighting for 15 minutes, I'm not thinking about adult care for my 4-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
But if I'm not fighting, I am thinking about that shit. So it's like to have that like almost get taken away too, and like lose that joy was, it's just tough, man. I don't know. I'm not trying to depress everybody that's
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
watching this, but
No,
it's just, yeah.
I feel you. I'll give you a perfect analogy from my life of what I experienced. So, another dream, something that I really enjoyed that I wanted to do was acting. I,
Yeah.
I I moved from New England to California, and I was out there for a couple of years. I actually I did a few things. I got all my SAG vouchers. Um, and I made the mistake before moving of telling people of what I wanted to do, and so immediately, people talking behind my back, oh, well, he can't do this. And then when I moved back home, it was even worse. You know, people.
Yeah.
So it's just like people people hate when someone tries to do something great, whether it's a UFC fighter or whether you're trying to play professional basketball or get in movies or whatever it is. Like if you're trying to do something out of the ordinary, people want to tear you down because they can't do their dream, whatever it may be. And it's a sad reality of just the world we live in,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate. It is super unfortunate. Like I said, I think if people would just be like, "Hey, man, that guy's probably doing his best, or that girl's probably just doing their best," and give them the benefit of the doubt. And obviously, there's a few and far between that aren't doing their best and they suck, but that's the minority. And sometimes I think people think that's the majority. And um, yeah, it's tough, man. But I love fighting. I feel like I've got a lot of clarity from some of the shit that's happened, and I'm happy for that for sure. Obviously some things went unfortunate and not how I would have written them or planned them, but that's life. And uh, and like I said, it gave me good clarity to see what's what, who's who, and um, I won't forget it.
Well, I can't wait to see you back in there, man. Again, March 1st, UFC Vegas 103. The main event of this card is Brandon Royval and Manel Kape, man. What a banger that is at 125. Before we circle back to Marquez, how do you see that main event fight going?
Yeah, Brandon's such a gas tank on him, man, and nobody's really like pressuring Cop. I think if Brandon can really get his pace going, I think 5 rounds is a different story. I think that Brandon is a 5 round fighter, and I think Brandon will finish him if he can get his pace going. And no one stopped him from getting his pace going, except for guys that have really good wrestling. Cop's not going to wrestle, so unless he catches him, I think Brandon will take it to him, and I think Brandon makes it look pretty easy, to be honest.
Wow. Okay. That what a main event that is.
Yeah.
And again, Julian Marquez, as I mentioned, he's lost 3 fights in a row, so he's going to be coming with his back against the wall. And you said you kind of feel that way too going into this one, but it sounds also like you feel real confident in the matchup. Like, do you anticipate a finish win for yourself, or is this going to be a gritty, grimy fight where you might actually go the distance?
I'm prepared to go the distance, but I feel like my style is to finish. I feel like I'm a finisher for sure, whether it be submission, knockout, whatever. I feel like if I'm in there, I'm always hunting to finish, even in the fights that I'm losing. So, yeah, and I feel good about the matchup. Like I said, training's I'm no fool, man. Training's different than competition. Uh, but there, like I said, there's things that I feel really, really confident in, and we trained together a year ago, so there's things that are different in a year's time. But yeah, I think I get him out of there. I don't know if it'll be early, I don't know if it'll be late, but I think I get it done.
Man, can't wait to see you back in there, Cody. I always enjoy chatting with you. Always enjoy watching you fight. Always a pleasure, my man. Before we do get out of here, anything you want to plug? Anyone you want to thank? The floor is yours.
I just want to, always plug my gym, Factory X, my management, Iridium. I've been with them almost 5 years now. I've been with Iridium almost 7, so pretty much my whole career. And I'm just thankful for those guys, and then obviously my wife and my kids, uh, and you, bro. Appreciate you. I always look forward to seeing your name on the docket when I know I got a fight coming up, and it's great always talking to you. And we'll link up one of these days, bro. One day we'll get you out, or maybe there'll be a card up there, and we'll link for sure.